I'm going to be the first to admit that I'm in the process of learning the mortgage industry, just like many of the new folks. But Dave didn't hire me for my knowledge and experience in the mortgage industry. That's why he has John to do that stuff. He hired me because my expertise in sales and developing salespeople. So when it comes to the basics of sales, the basics are the basics. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. Doesn't matter if it's copier sales. Doesn't matter if it's mortgage sales. Doesn't matter if it's widget sales, right? There's some basics in a sales process. There's actually 7 steps in a sales process, and they are preparation, prospecting, approach, presentation, handling objections, closing, and last but not least is follow-up. And no matter what the outcome of any of the other stages, this one you should always do until you get results. Whether you close the sale or not, your job's not done. The follow-up stage keeps you in contact with your partners and customers, not only for repeat business, but for referrals as well, right? And salespeople often carry a reputation of being pushy or aggressive. You may even think to yourself, I don't want to be seen as pushy or aggressive or annoying, right? So you just don't follow up, right? Or you stop following up. The number one reason that people won't get back to you is not because they're not interested, it's because they're busy. According to the Harvard Business Review, professionals have an average of 200 emails in their inbox at any one time. And part of the whole sales process, realize a lot of that is stuff you're bringing into it. You're bringing in what your perspective is on things, right? And if someone's not getting back to you, we start getting in our heads about, why that might be. So most likely people aren't ignoring you because they're not interested in working with you or they're not interested in what you have to offer. It's because they're busy. So you just need to be tenacious in getting their attention because they have a lot going on. Now, I want to share with you a few sales follow-up tips. These are just general tips for following up. And then I want to get into some specifics for this industry. So the first tip is you got to use a variety of methods, right? So let's say you sent 2 or 3 emails. It might be time to pick up the phone, right? And alternatively, if you've called them and left a bunch of voice message, maybe you send an email or a text message. And you're not limited to that either, right? Maybe you reach out to them on LinkedIn if that's a medium that you're using, right? You just got to try different ways because people respond to different communication methods, right? Some people like the phone, some people like emails, some people like text message. I heard something the other day. Most millennials like to use text messages with their friends, but they actually prefer a phone call or an email if they're talking to somebody in a professional setting. So you just got to use different forms of communication. The second is your cadence, right? It's not how much you follow up with folks that puts them off. It's the frequency of which you're doing it, right? So you got to space out your follow-ups. You don't want to do that too closely together. And there's not an exact formula. Doing it every day might be a little too much, but if you only follow up every other month, that's probably too much. So my recommendation is do it weekly. Set a weekly follow-up and use your calendar reminders to make sure you don't miss one. The third tip is you have to provide value each time you follow up, right? People don't want to feel like they're on the receiving end of some aggressive sales pitch. Instead, you got to engage them on each follow-up. You got to ensure that you're bringing value. So in other words, it's not about you. It's not even about the rates or anything like that. It's about them. Right? Your follow-up has to be about them. So a couple of ways you can provide value. One, begin by asking the partner or client, how are they doing? How's business going? Ideally, you want to strive to remember something very significant about them. It keeps it personal. You also want to keep notes about pain points, problems that they're trying to solve, because at the center of that conversation, you're selling a solution to their problem. So you want them to feel like they were heard. So when you have a conversation with them, take down some notes, put it in Salesforce, right? So you can refer back to it so you keep the conversation relevant and about them. You can include a link to a relevant article or blog post or a video in your follow-up, right? Just make sure the content relates strongly to them and the problems that maybe they've told you they're facing, or things that are going on in their life. If you provide them useful content, it's going to show them you're interested in a mutually beneficial relationship, as opposed to just trying to get a quick sale out of them. Now, remember that value doesn't have to be financial, right? You simply want to ensure that you're offering them something potentially beneficial to them every time you speak to them, right? So it can be personal. It doesn't have to be some financial, I'm going to save you money type of conversation, but it should have value to them, right? And value is perceived by the individual that you're talking to. So tip number 4, always define the next step. That's one of the biggest follow-up mistakes that salespeople make, is not clearly defining the next steps in the process. So you want to be specific as possible. I'll call you in a week is pretty vague, right? I'll call you on Wednesday. How's 9:30 for you? Works much better. The more specific you can be, 2 things. One, the more accountable they will be to call, and the more likely you're going to actually have that call. Tip number 5, subject lines matter. So if you're following up via email, the subject line can actually make or break that follow-up. Like I said, people are busy, thousands of or hundreds of emails in their inbox. You got to grab their attention and make them want to open your email in the first place. So I wouldn't title your email just checking in or follow-up. Odds are they're going to ignore that. They're going to delete it. They're going to just trash it, right? So you want to craft something that's very enticing and makes them want to open it. So you want some personalization. A couple statistics that I found pretty interesting. 29%, if you personalize an email, it increases the open rate by 29%. 64% of people say that they open emails based on the subject line's relevance, and 40% say that beginning the email with the person's name increase the open rates, right? So use their name in the email. Do something that makes them intrigued enough that they want to open up your email. So a couple things in regards to emails. Keep it short, to the point. You want to be conversational in the tone. You want to create a sense of urgency. Ask a direct question. Hey, can you help me out? What do you think about? That's going to entice them to open up the email, right? Because they want to find out what it is. Make sure that you indicated it contains some sort of valuable content, right? Saw this video and I thought of you. Thought this article might be useful for you. I mean, those demonstrate values, right? Remember, the first hurdle you have to get over is getting them to open up the email in the first place. So take the time to craft something that's going to make them take action on it. The next tip is keep it brief. People don't have time for rambling emails, long phone calls, endless meetings, right? You got to cut to the chase. Follow-ups should be quick and to the point, right? An email follow-up shouldn't be more than 6 lines total length. And a follow-up phone call shouldn't be more than 10 minutes. Those are pretty good rules of thumb, right? I know it doesn't sound like very long, and it isn't, right? But you only have a short time to grab their attention, right? If every time you follow up with them, it turns into an hour-long conversation, they're going to start avoiding your phone calls because they don't have time for that. And lastly, know when to stop, right? You can't follow up forever. At some point, it becomes too aggressive or pushy or pointless. So when is enough enough? It's hard to say because it depends on the circumstance. Traditional sales process says that you follow up endlessly until they die, right? Or you get some sort of definitive response. I'm not sure I subscribe to that. I think you follow up till there's no reason to follow up any further, right? Since 80% of successful sales require at least 5 follow-ups on average, I'd probably use that as your baseline. You should probably follow up at least 5 times with somebody, probably not more than 6 or 7 if you aren't getting any response. A lack of response is a no, right? If they're not responding to emails, phone calls, text messages, whatever, It's a no. If you've done that 6 or 7 times, it's probably time to throw in the towel, right? Now, if they do respond, then you keep following up, right? If they get back to you, then you keep going through the steps, right? However, before you quit for good, I recommend sending one final email. I call that the breakup email, right? So if they're interested, but they haven't got back to you, then that's going to cause them to take some action, right? And the breakup email is something like, hey, a good example might be, look, I've reached out several times. I hadn't got a response. If you are interested in working together, please get back to me right away. Otherwise, I'm going to put your file in the closed bin or something like that, right? There's lots of examples. You go out online, look at different professional emails for like final steps. I've got some reference places you can go, right? But
hey, Dean.
Yeah.
We actually have a template that we've used for years that gets like a response like 90%
of
the time. If you guys all use Salesforce, of course, do you know how to use templates in Salesforce? It's if you go in there and you insert template, it's checking in to. I have a lot of templates in there you guys can use, by the way, for follow-ups. Different, text, but say different things, but checking in to. And it's basically what Dean said. It works perfectly.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris.
Sorry. Yep. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's great. I appreciate you chiming in on that. So what do you currently do for a follow-up process? I want you guys to share a little bit of what you do. Ryan sent me something last night that I think him and Jessica worked on. So Ryan, I don't know, can you walk through kind of what your follow-up process is?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this was stuff that Jessica came up with that I thought was pretty cool. Just the step behind it, but let me pull it up really quick. Obviously, first thing I do is thank you note, right? Like, I think that's pretty standard. I literally don't do anything before I get back to the office. Shit, now it's not pulling up. You want
me to have Jessica walk through it?
Let's see.
Got it.
Oh, here we go. I got it. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, thank you card. Social media for me is huge. I like to connect with all of my realtors partners on social media. So that's follow-up number one, right? And I've gotten really good feedback on that. I typically will send a book then too, but I'm going to change that a little bit because I want to space those follow-ups out a little bit. I think you can send a book later in the process. And this is something that Jessica really heightened on, and I try to do well, but I think sometimes I have more opportunity here, which is just following up on something you heard in the meeting, right? Like being an observant listener, not just ready to talk about what the next thing you're going to talk about is. So whether that's something in their family or pain point in their business or anything you can help expand on, right? That's a good thing to follow up with the next week because that's, obviously still fresh in your mind. I think a good way to do that is, if you're not taking notes in the meeting, just right when you get to your car, whip out your notebook and just take down all the notes, right? I've done that a few times. Like I'll write down names of family members and kids and like all this different stuff. So I'll put that in the Salesforce. Third thing, this is what Jessica came up with. She can probably elaborate on this more, but it's ask their opinion on something, right? Like if they're willing to give you their opinion, like it's now you're treating them as an expert, right? It's not necessarily something of value, but it's, the psychology behind it is, if they give you something small, they're willing to give you something bigger later, aka a lead, right? So I think if you're looking to them to gain some guidance, whether it be like, what are you seeing on your most successful offers or whatever it is, right? I think they'll be flattered that you're asking for their opinion. So
well, I like that. I like that one because it also shows a level of trust that you have with them, right? That you're going to have reciprocated back. Yeah. So when I saw your bullet points last night, that was actually one of my favorite ones. So
yeah, it was me too. I was like, wow, it's genius. I haven't thought of that.
Good job, Jessica.
Yeah, good job is right. I'll send the book then. And like the fourth follow-up, now probably just the Amplify book for, a while is probably what I'll send people because I know nobody's read that. And then, then on number 5 will be add value. right? So what does that mean? Sim appraisal gap TCA or new product or something, timely for their business. Maybe you saw something on social media or whatever it is, right? Just something of value. I think that's pretty easy to do right now. Next follow-up, we check in on the book, give them a couple weeks to like start reading it, maybe talk about a chapter you really liked. And then also at that point, ask for a referral for someone in their network, right? That's where I'm at right now. Is I had a meeting with a realtor who hasn't sent me any business, but I asked for a referral to a divorce attorney, right? She talked about how she had a really good one. So here we are. Next would be phone call to check in, text check in to see how they're doing, right? And I think number 8 would be to try to get back with them into another meeting. I think it obviously depends on the relationship and how things are going. Maybe like for me, what I've done is if I've gotten a lead or closed a deal with somebody, now I'm like, hey, glad that we're working together now. I'd love to follow up and just get some feedback from you, right? That's my point of the meeting. So I got one of those next week with a newer realtor that I have. And that's the 8-step process. And then I think from there, you can kind of, I'll do like a once a month or once every other month twice a month follow up with realtors once I've gone now through that process.
Jessica, you want to add anything to that since you guys kind of came up with this?
Yeah, I took it from the Ninja Selling, and that came from Jacqueline's mastermind meeting. We all talked about the 8x8, and I was like, what's this? So I read that chapter real quick and I was like, okay, this is what it is. So then I think it's important to like pretty early on establish a personal relationship with them. So send something that they talked about that's personalized, like it doesn't have to be, or just even something, just acknowledging that they have a personal need, because they do tell you stuff when you're meeting with them. I just had a realtor talk about how he wants to get more into volunteering. So I'm going to try to connect him to the school I used to work with, that to volunteer more. So, I mean, that's something that's really personal that he said, this is something I really want to work on. And so I'm going to try to help him with that. And then offer solutions to whatever problems that they have specifically mentioned. I don't think that's any, thing new, but at some point, and then continuing to send them, like anything that came up specifically for them, during the meeting, just write that down. And then if you can, like send a bomb, like the more times they see your face, the better, right? Because it just gets them like there's like science behind, like every time they see you, you're building that relationship, right? So like the bomb is building that relationship. And then offer to consult with any of their team members or train them. I like that mentoring thing. That's something I'm going to offer, like a free 10 to 15 minute consultation with any of your team members who are kind of stuck with any of their buyers or clients. I can bring my psychological experience. I can bring my real estate, my business, my mortgage experience to this table, and no obligation to work with me. I'm just here to help you get those people off the bench and into the game. So those are some of the things that I thought about doing.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned the Ninja Selling, because that was actually part of what I was going to talk about. Is you can use the 8 and 8 marketing plan from Ninja Selling as part of a follow up, because there's some great stuff in there. So congratulations to both of you for applying that and doing that process. Christine shared she's been relaxing in Mexico for the last week. I guess winning all that travel money came in handy. And so, but she did send me what her follow-up process is. And so she said when she has a meeting, and so if she has a meeting, her follow-up process is this. She sends a text the same day, thanking them for their time. And then she sends out a first meeting gift a few days after the meeting. So it's a handwritten card, a book, maybe something related to the conversation. Then she puts on Monday market updates and marketing emails for the spring's new agent material. So I think that's a piece that marketing actually created for her. And then she sends that out on Mondays and puts them on that. And then she says, usually I always get a thank you once they receive the book card. And then from there, they usually schedule a second meeting. So, so when she sends out number 2, the first meeting gift, that almost always makes them respond, send her a thank you, and then engage in another meeting. Now, if she doesn't get a meeting or there's no contact, she calls and leaves a voice message. She tells them that she'll shoot them a text so they can respond for convenience. She sends a text message saying, I left you a voicemail, cryptic enough for them to call back. And then she sends an email a few days later, calls at the end of the week, sets on a weekly update. So like the Monday market thing that she does with the other folks, she might put them on that. And then depending on how big the agent is, she'll determine on whether or not she keeps pursuing them after that. Like I said, at some point in time, you say enough's enough, and you send a breakup email and say, hey, look, it appears that you don't have any interest here. I'm going to move on. And then if they do, they typically will go, no, I've just been really busy. I really would like to talk to you. But the big takeaway here is using very specific follow-ups to catch their attention, and always show that you pay attention. Stay consistent in your approach, and that shows consistency as a person as well. So, so that's what she does. So in my effort to become more educated on the industry and what works for successful mortgage originators, I ran across a video that was done by Todd Duncan this past Monday on a process he recommended for follow-up as it relates to mortgage originators and real estate industry in general. What I really liked about it is not only can it be an effective first-time follow-up, but it's a great follow-up if you have established relationships as well, right? So for those of you who don't know, Todd Duncan he's a very successful mortgage loan originator. He launched a company called High Trust Company that trains sales professionals in the real estate mortgage market. He's written like 17 books, 2 of them New York Times bestsellers, but he did a survey of several thousand mortgage and real estate professionals. Almost 100% of them said that they wished they had done a better job of following up in their careers. So almost all of them admitted that they suck at follow-up, right? So when Todd was a loan originator, his real estate partners and him, along with their teams, helped under just 6,000 people buy real estate in 10 years. That's over an average of over 600 loans per year. And during that time, he only had 13 real estate partners. So what he learned during that time frame was something he refers to as partnership planning. And you can go out and you watch his video. He'll do a much better job of really digging into. But there was a quote in his video that I loved, and I don't even know if he originally said it or not. He said, transactions will make you a living, but relationships will make you a fortune. And so you ask yourself this: how many strategic partners do I currently have? Now, for those of you that are new, that answer might be 1 or 0 or whatever, right? But the term strategic partner indicates that you've developed a strategy with them related to how you're going to grow your businesses together. And so he gives this example of a loan officer that had a great meeting with a realtor. And at the end, the loan officer asked this question: based on everything that I've shared with you today, do you feel we have a basis for doing business together? To which the realtor replies, yes, I've really enjoyed our conversation. Very unique, much different than most lenders that have engaged with me on. I look forward to working with you. To which the mortgage professional says, awesome, I'll follow up with you next week and see what's going on. Now, does that sound like maybe a conversation you've had after a meeting? Or, I mean, is that something that you can relate to? Because what typically happens is they leave the meeting and then the loan officer a week later still hasn't received a referral. And he starts worrying and wondering why he hasn't gotten anything yet, right? So a couple of weeks later, still nothing. Time goes on. He starts getting in his head about why this is happening, instead of owning that he probably should have done something different at the time of the meeting, right? So here's the statistic for you. Only 1 out of 10 mortgage professionals actually schedule a next strategic activity. So 90% of the mortgage professionals out there don't schedule the next activity. And what I can tell you from almost 30 years of sales, if you don't schedule it, it's less likely to happen. Right? So try ending the meeting like this. Awesome. To get this partnership started right, I'd like to schedule a 15-minute weekly meeting for the next 10 to 12 weeks. Get it on our calendar so we have a check-in. Would you be open to that? Right? Now, if you built enough rapport and you've built enough value in the meeting, they're going to say absolutely. Right? So what you do is you take out your phone, right? And say, I do partnership sessions every Thursday. Right now, I've got a noon, a 2, and a 2:45 time slot. Which do you prefer? And most likely, they're going to pick one of those. Right now, it doesn't matter what day or time or whatever, but you want to have sort of specific time in mind to talk to them. Right. So then he sends them the invite right there in the meeting, and they accept it right there in the meeting. And now you've set a follow-up for the next 3 months that you guys have mutually committed to. Now, here's what I really like about the follow-up process. And he goes in much more detail, but he calls those partnership planning sessions. What I love about that is it demonstrates to them that this is a partnership, that you want to help their business as well. You're not just there to, hey, send me people, right? Feed me, right? And so during the 10 to 15 minute sessions, you're going to ask them a couple questions, right? The first question you're going to ask them is, who have you met in the last 7 to 14 days that you would like to work with regarding either buying or selling real estate, but you're not sure they're going to use you? I'd like to help reach out to them on your behalf, bring them back in the fold by help cross-selling you as your value as a realtor to them. So let's say they have 5 people each week that they've met, but they're not sure you're going to use them, right? That's 20 a month, right? So let me ask you, John, if I could potentially convert just 5% or one of those per month and bring you that, then I could bring you 12 more sales per year. I can't promise you anything, but would that be at least worth letting me try?
Of course.
I mean, if we assume John makes 10K on every deal, that's an extra $120,000 income that I help him make. And that's real value to working with me, right? The second question you ask is, who do you plan on showing properties to in the next 7 to 14 days that I haven't had a pre-approval conversation with to help determine their short and long-term goals and their actual purchasing power in the marketplace? So this question is going to get you 3 things. It's going to get you any buyer who doesn't already have a lender that they've spoken to. It's going to get you a buyer that maybe knows a lender, but they haven't had a conversation with, or it's going to get you a buyer that's already pre-approved with another lender. And now you can have a conversation whereby you can either win their business or at a minimum offer up a second opinion, right? So remember, sales is a numbers game. So let's do some math. If you want a massively successful business, you're going to need to get 10 realtors feeding you 2 leads a week. I mean, Hobber, does that sound about right?
Chris stepped out of here.
Oh, did he? From my conversations with Jacqueline and Giuseppe and Hobber, that's about a pretty good rule of thumb, right? You're going to need about 10 realtors that feed you about 2 leads a week. That's going to provide you 80 buyer consultations each month. Out of 80 leads, if you only convert 25%, so only 25% of them become triggered applications that go into process, you're closing almost 240 loans a year. Now, that's only an example of a follow-up process, but it's about bringing value to potential partnerships and having a plan to follow up with them. So, so you've got to have a plan. Go out and there's a couple videos that he has out there. Go see. He gets into much more detail about that. There's 3 other questions that you ask him during the partnership reviews or partnership planning sessions, but really some great stuff that really brings value to your referral partners and sets you apart from them. So anything else anybody else wants to add related to follow-up? All right. Well, thanks for being here today, guys. Have it a great Friday, finish strong, and we'll see you later.
Hell yeah. Thanks, Dean. See you later, guys.